Welcome back to the main stage. I'm Charlie Mahoney, board chair of the Michigan Works Association. I hope your day is going well so far. I know mine is. And we have a great town hall style discussion today with U.S. Representatives Peter Meijer and Hayley Stevens, who will fill us in on what's going on at the federal level with workforce development issues. You know, in Michigan, our demand-driven focus means we start with understanding the needs of our employers in each of our unique regions, and we work to customize programs and solutions for each of them. With our demand-driven focus, we're able to use our resources wisely to serve more individuals more effectively and more efficiently. But the way we serve individuals certainly has changed, and it's changed dramatically due to the COVID crisis. The Michigan Works Network had to adjust to serving customers, both our employers and job seekers, over the phone and online in order to keep everyone safe. And while businesses closed down, Michigan Works continued to be there for our customers to ensure that they could find the services they need to keep working or to get back to work. Many of you went the extra mile, volunteering to assist Michigan's Unemployment Insurance Agency with the huge influx of unemployment claims. Hearing your voice on the other end of the telephone was many times a lifesaver for those individuals who were having trouble getting their unemployment claims moving forward. Your commitment to excellence and continuous improvement makes all the difference in the world. It changes a lot of lives. And I want you to know, I am so proud to be a part of the system whose individuals are so devoted and so hardworking as you are into changing lives. You know, thank you. Thank you for making such a difference in people's lives, for all you do. You know, I guess I need to tell you, there's another whole segment of work we do in advocacy, and the important people in that are our relationships with our legislators. And it's my pleasure to turn the program over to Lily Brewer, Director, Barry and Cass Van Buren, Michigan Works, so she can introduce Michigan Works Association's 2021 Legislator of the Year. Lily?
Good morning. I'm Lily Brewer, Director of Barry and Cass Van Buren, Michigan Works. It is my distinct honor and pleasure to introduce the Michigan Works Association's 2021 Legislator of the Year, Representative Beth Griffin. Representative Griffin is being recognized for her extraordinary leadership in advancing Michigan's talent and economic development efforts. A former middle school teacher, Representative Griffin has made training and education a centerpiece of her service in the House of Representatives. During the budget battle of 2020, Representative Griffin led the successful fight to restore $3.75 million for the Jobs for Michigan's Graduates program and was a leader in the restoration of funding for Going Pro Talent Fund. Representative Griffin has had a strong voice in additional funding for career technical training. She is spearheading a 3-bill package called the 21st Century Skills Plan, which would give students greater flexibility toward career readiness. Representative Griffin also sponsored legislation which prorates licensing fees for businesses in the skilled trades that were shut down due to government order. She is a great partner with Michigan Works, and we are proud to nominate her as the 2021 Legislator of the Year. Thank you to Representative Beth Griffin for the great work you do every day to ensure that community partners and residents can access services available to support their employment-related needs.
Hi guys, I'm State Representative Beth Griffin, and I just wanted to make a quick video to thank you guys from the bottom of my heart for the award of Legislator of the Year. You guys know that you're my favorite people, and I just want to take a moment to love on you just a little bit and to tell you to keep going, because our work together is really important. And in my 3rd term, as we work to better connect students and young people and people that are maybe older but transitioning from one career to the other, that your job has never been more important. I want to do everything I can with the time that I have left and in the future, hopefully, to help you do what you do best. And that means that to do that, both of us need to grow and we need to keep listening, especially to employees that are making those changes and to employers that are having the growth issues, right, and the challenges. And that by listening to both people, we've got connections and we've got resources that we can pull together and help better connect people in the communities despite all the difficulties that we have. And thanks so much for being the glue that holds communities together. We need groups like you to continue their work. You're so important. So as workforce chair this term, I'll continue to look for ways that I can help you do your jobs better, and know that my door is always open to you. And I hope to see you in the future real soon here. Thanks.
Congratulations again to Representative Beth Griffin. My name is Ryan Hunt, CEO of the Michigan Works Association. It is now my honor to bring you today's Federal Lawmaker Town Hall. Thank you to Jacob Maas, CEO of West Michigan Works, for moderating today's discussion. You will hear from U.S. Representatives Peter Meijer and Hayley Stevens about current efforts in Congress regarding workforce development issues. Without further ado, please welcome Representatives Meijer and Stevens.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jacob Maas, CEO of West Michigan Works. I would like to welcome you to today's Federal Lawmaker Town Hall. Before we begin our discussion, let me introduce our lawmakers. Congressman Peter Meijer is a proud fourth-generation West Michigander. Born and raised in Grand Rapids, his father, Fred Meijer, instilled in him a love for West Michigan and inspired him to pursue a path of purpose and service. After graduating high school, Congressman Meijer enlisted in the Army Reserves and deployed to Iraq as a non-commissioned officer, postponing his studies to serve with an intelligence unit at joint U.S.-Iraqi bases in the Baghdad area. After returning from Iraq in 2011 and finishing his studies at Columbia University, he joined Team Rubicon, a veteran-based disaster response organization. With Team Rubicon, Congressman Meijer led humanitarian efforts in South Sudan dealing with a refugee crisis. He also led operations in New York City after Superstorm Sandy, Oklahoma after a series of devastating tornadoes, and in the Philippines after Super Typhoon Yolanda. While in the Philippines, he accepted a job with Conflict Analysis NGO in Afghanistan. Congressman Meijer ran the NGO's advisory operations in southern Afghanistan from Kandahar City, managing a large team to help aid workers safely provide relief to the Afghan people. After leaving Afghanistan, he pursued his MBA at New York University and then returned to Michigan to work in urban redevelopment and real estate. A passion for service and for West Michigan compelled Congressman Meijer to continue to serve his community by running for Congress. Thank you for being here, Congressman Meijer, and thank you for your service. Congresswoman Hayley Stevens grew up in Rochester Hills, Michigan, and graduated from Seaholm High School in Birmingham. She earned a master's degree in social policy and philosophy and a bachelor's in political science and philosophy from American University. Before being elected to Congress, Congresswoman Stevens served as the Chief of Staff to the U.S. Auto Rescue Task Force, the federal initiative responsible for saving General Motors, Chrysler, and over 200,000 Michigan jobs. She's also played a key role in setting up the Office of Recovery for Automotive Communities and Workers and the White House Office of Manufacturing Policy. After serving in the Obama administration, she worked in a manufacturing research lab focused on the future of work and digital age. Congressman Stevens works to protect access to healthcare, promote manufacturing, expand educational opportunities, stand up for workers' rights, and increase investment in critical research and development. Thank you, Representatives Meijer and Stevens, for joining us in today's town hall. Let's start with today's discussion with a question for Congresswoman Stevens. Congresswoman Stevens, I understand you worked with House Majority Whip James Clyburn to launch the House Democratic Manufacturing Work Group to examine key issues for strengthening the American manufacturing sector. Can you tell us more about this group and what it's trying to accomplish?
Absolutely. And Jacob, it's so great to be here with you today and my colleague, Congressman Meijer. I want to thank you and commend you for your leadership of West Michigan Works through the years and just being a very dedicated professional to a field I care a whole heck of a lot about and is one of the reasons I ran for Congress. And to everyone participating in this year's Michigan Works annual conference, virtually, it's a 3-day affair. I had a chance to review your agenda. It really looks like a conference I wish I could spend all 3 days at. And I might have to ask for special privileges to hear Ann Lauer at the end of your 3 days together. But your question, Jacob, is really so near and dear to me. Yes, Congressman Jim Clyburn, the senior congressman from South Carolina, and I put our heads together to form a working group focused on advanced manufacturing, on manufacturing legislations, given that we're in the House majority. And we've got a laser focus on making sure that bills that foster our manufacturing sector, our workforce potential, our access to capital, sustainability. We know that these green jobs are something that we've led on here in Michigan for a long time, and to also provide the certainty and the legislative certainty for these critical pieces of legislation, anything from reauthorizing the Ex-Im Bank to, I know we're going to talk about WIOA today. I would consider that as part of our charge. The ways in which we help our small and mid-sized businesses, our manufacturers in particular. I have a program that I do in Michigan's 11th district that's on the other side of the state, Congressman Meyer's district, where I go and visit manufacturers, oftentimes the smallest of the supply chain, to just really learn about the products they're making, learn about their workforce needs, and see how I, as a federal lawmaker, can cut through red tape to make their lives easier. So that's a bit of what we're up to with our national working group on advanced manufacturing, sleeves rolled up, and very eager to pass bipartisan legislation to get things done for the American people.
Great. Thanks, Congresswoman Stevens. Sounds like important work. You know, advanced manufacturing continues to be one of those high sectors, high demand jobs in West Michigan. And I'm sure our employers would be happy with any red tape that you may be cutting for them. So thank you for your work. I'll now turn to Congressman Meijer for the next question. Workforce strategies present some of the greatest challenges for West Michigan's agricultural industries. You supported the passage of the Farm Workforce Modernization Act of 2021. Why is this bill important, and how would it benefit the agricultural industry in West Michigan, or in Michigan as a whole?
Thank you, Jacob, and thank you to West Michigan Works for hosting this today and for all the great work that you're doing, and honored to be joined here with my colleague from the 11th District. So it's good to see you, Congresswoman Stevens. And just, I think when we approach legislation dealing with our workforce, to me, the watchword is stability. How can we grant more confidence as businesses are making their plans today so that they know, they can rely upon something for years into the future? They don't need to continue to keep their heads on a swivel and adapt to conditions that can be stabilized, because obviously market pricing, our trade environment, our broader economy, there are so many things that we cannot control, we cannot manage, we cannot fix in terms of just rooting them in one stable point. But when it comes to our governing atmosphere, when it comes to regulations, when it comes to components like labor supply, we should do everything we can to provide some stability so that folks can plan today. In the agricultural sector, if you don't know how many individuals you may have in your employment, how many folks might be able to harvest, come harvest time, that's going to have a strong impact on how you're planting, on how you are looking at the year to come. Specifically, the Farm Workforce Modernization Act sought to bring some stability to our immigrant labor categories. When it comes to seasonal labor, this has been a perennial challenge for our agricultural sector. And even as that sector has grown, even as it's seen some efficiencies on the technology side, there still needs to be a strong labor input and demand. Now, we have seen over the course of this pandemic a lot of challenges with our labor supply, many due to the way in which our government has approached some of these programs and protections that maybe made sense during periods of uncertainty, but now have really been almost an intentional unemployment uplift. That has obviously hit our agricultural sector as well. But our agricultural sector was dealing with sustained structural challenges that really tie a lot more into our dysfunctional immigration system and our inability to come up with a stable, concise process to be able to match workforce opportunities within the U.S. With a willing labor supply. So when it comes to the Farm Workforce Modernization Act, the goal was to be able to give a little bit of that stability, to not have this really centrally planned and constricting environment that we've had over successive administrations, but to try to at least give some confidence in our agricultural sector that they will be able to access the talent that they need in order to get the jobs done that they need to. Because if we do not support our domestic agricultural sector, if we're not doing everything we can to make sure that our farmers and our growers are able to do the difficult jobs that they have, we'll have a number of negative knock-on effects throughout our economy. But there's always a broader world out there that we need to be competing with as well.
Great. Thanks for your insight, Congressman Meijer, and your work in that space. Truly appreciate it. Congresswoman Stevens, I'm not sure if you attended or were able to listen to the Inside Politics earlier today. You had a nice shout out of truly understanding workforce development and your work around apprenticeships. So you are co-leading sponsor for the National Apprenticeship Act of 2021, which passed the House earlier this year. Do you expect that the elements of this bill will be combined with Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act reauthorization? What are your thoughts on that space?
Well, I love that you're thinking strategy, Jacob, because it's all about how we get the president's signature on that dotted line and sign those bills into law, right? So you're spot on. In February of this year, the House passed the National Apprenticeship Act. I was really thrilled to work on that legislation in my post on the Education and Labor Committee in the House of Representatives. Two components in that bill I worked really closely on. They were my provisions of the bill. One was the Partners Act, which provides a conduit for those small and medium-sized businesses to register apprenticeships. We see that so often where the farther down the line you go, the harder and more cumbersome it becomes to access those apprenticeships and get registered. And I talk to those businesses all the time. And then I also co-led an amendment to make sure that we added just a few extra dollars in to the tune of $2 million to pilot different apprenticeship initiatives, particularly in advanced manufacturing or IT. We obviously, and this is something I was working on before I was in Congress, on cybersecurity workforce training programs about 5-6 years ago now. And you're spot on, Jacob, that before I was in the post I'm in now, I was managing a multi-million-dollar workforce development initiative, creating and crafting the country's first online training programs for digital manufacturing through a host of national partners, and piloting some early stage programs for that next generation. We know that pipeline is so important when we start thinking about middle schoolers and high schoolers and exposing them to some of the workforce opportunities before them. I'll never forget hearing a young student I was working with tell me, my goodness, I never thought I could become an engineer, but seeing this CNC machine in action showed me that I could pursue this as a career path. And so that's why, these apprenticeship programs are so important, because the direct conduits from the secondary level to whatever you're going to do after high school. And we know that Michigan Works is really supportive of FIRST Robotics, which is another great conduit program. But when we look at the strategy for how we are going to get these bills signed, they're definitely on two different tracks. And what we're also seeing is the House is going through a big process right now to get our budget passed. And I think that you're going to see some glimmers in both of these packages. And I know we're going to talk, I think, about infrastructure later today that might relate to these workforce opportunities. But but really we need to get WIOA reauthorized. We're going to see that go through its track. And I know that the chairman of the Education and Labor Committee is a little close hold right now in terms of how these may or may not come together. So I'll answer you honestly. I right now see them as two separate packages with maybe the potential of coming together, but no official word yet. An overall commitment to seeing this get done for Michigan and for the entirety of our country. And you better believe, Jacob, I'm fired up about it.
That's great. Thanks, Congresswoman Stevens, and thanks for your leadership and, frankly, your honesty about how to move this forward. So, I'm sure it's difficult. I'm sure there's a behind the scenes process. We all say it's like making sausage, that we want the final product and we want it to taste good. We don't really care how it goes into it, but obviously there's some strategy in there. If there's things that we can do to help, just know that we're happy to help. We know that on the call earlier, we heard from National Skills Coalition talking about the need for investments in workforce development and how we haven't seen any yet over the last year and a half, 2 years. And so, I think that the timing's right. We're ready to get back to work. We're ready to help Michiganders transition into new jobs and occupations. Apprenticeships are great tools and resources for that space. So thank you for your work. Congressman Meijer, again, I want to thank you for your service to our country, and serving in the U.S. Army. As a veteran, you understand the importance of assisting veterans with career placement when they return home and they transition back into civilian life. At Michigan Works, we are dedicated to helping veterans finding training and employment following completion of their service. What are your priorities for helping veterans readjust to civilian life?
Yeah, thank you for that question. This is an issue I've been involved with closely for over a decade. Before running for Congress, I was chairman of the board of Student Veterans of America, one of the largest post 9/11 veteran service organizations. And there we spent a lot of time trying to reframe how folks were looking at the veterans community. All too often, the narrative is one of a group that deserves charity or pity, when the reality is that veterans are a fantastic asset to any organization. They are really a group, a cohort that employers can and should be competing to hire, not necessarily out of a sense of obligation, but because of the tremendous skills, experience, and perspective that they can bring. So this is something that I have sought to support while in office as well. We over a decade ago, 13 years ago, passed the post 9/11 GI Bill. So doing everything we can to make sure that our educational opportunities are there for folks leaving their military service. But there's also a number of components that we are still working to address around the occupational licensing issue and around portability of certifications. This is something that impacts not just veterans who may have grown up in one community or may have gotten a technical certification while in the military or as a civilian in another location and now need some portability so that they can seek opportunities where they may have moved after their military service, but also for military spouses who may have a job in one area and then are relocated because of their spouse's military service to another state and need to seek employment opportunities. So we have a lot of opportunities to continue to build upon what's already been done to work on that employment portability and to continue to connect that pathway of individuals who are leaving the military, making sure they find not just gainful employment, but are also on a strong pathway to provide for themselves and their families over the decades to come, and to be able to continue to contribute to this country, to this project, and just the new phase of life that they find themselves.
Great. Thanks, Congressman Meijer. Next question is for the both of you. Feel free to jump in, whoever wants to take it first, or if maybe someone wants to rebut something somebody else has said, maybe they want to go second. But you can't talk about politics in Michigan without talking about infrastructure. Why is the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act of 2021 important for workforce development? What impact do you believe it will have on Michigan?
Yeah, I can start here. There's a great opportunity with this infrastructure bill. One, because it goes right to the heart of what we're all about here in Michigan. Obviously, the general maintenance and repair of our roads, our bridges, our dams, that guarantee that you're going to drive on the safe roadways and bridges. I talked to, our ACEC, our Construction Engineers Association, and they've told me, hey, We've got, 100 bridges that need repair in mid-Michigan, and yet we've got money for 6. And so when we start to think about that workforce opportunity of that engineering, that talent that's going to go into just the general repair, we're, really feeling optimistic about what that's going to mean for our state. But the other piece of this, and this is something that Congressman Meijer and I have been kind of tap dancing around during the session with you, is the innovation piece. When we think about a highly skilled, competitive workforce, and this is something that Michigan has always led the way in, it's our innovation capabilities. You think about the last year and a half that we've been through. Lots of changes and challenges thrown at us, unprecedented disruption, and yet a consistency was our commitment to our electric vehicle sector, autonomous vehicles, the new technologies. I kept my finger on the pulse of this the entire pandemic, and it'll knock your socks off because we have continued to stay dedicated to this. And so in our bipartisan infrastructure bill, we're getting these early stage investments in EVs. I've got, a mayor in Troy, Michigan, to a township supervisor in Canton, the corners of my district, asking for the EV investments, asking for the charging stations. Are we going to do it all overnight? Certainly not. That's not how legislation works in America. But that initial instigating catalytic investment is going to pay dividends for us here in Michigan, and it's going to enable our workforce to shine. And then certainly you can talk about the flexibility of the dollars too. I know that you live and breathe this, Jacob, with that ownership of the dollars that we allocate through the federal government to you as a West Michigan workforce development organization. You rely on that flexibility, and I want you to have that so that you can do things from the bottom up. So guys, I'm gonna say it right now. We're gonna get this bill passed. It's gonna get signed into law. It's just about there, and Michigan is gonna shine and lead the way through it all. So thank you.
Thank you. Representative Meijer?
So I come at this from a slightly different angle. As somebody who was, and we're both part of the Problem Solvers Caucus, I'm not thrilled with the end product from this. My biggest concern, and so I apologize for the record scratch and kind of the slight shift. And I guarantee there's a lot of places where Congresswoman Stevens and I will be in violent agreement here shortly. But this bill fails to tackle some of the underlying planning, permitting, and regulatory constraints that have led our infrastructure projects to be a multiple more expensive than any comparable OECD average. The fact that you can build highways in Canada for significantly less expense than in the U.S. points to a lot of underlying structural challenges that we're not solving for in this bill. I have no doubt that if you spend and throw a lot of money at a problem, some of it will probably be spent well. With the moral hazard of having states rely on, these large one-time, massive windfalls in order to invest in their infrastructure leads to this continued cycle of deferred maintenance and expectations of something to come, that the longer it lasts or the longer you wait for it and the shorter it lasts, only again kind of trap us into a cycle of underinvestment. And states allocate federal dollars for highway or other infrastructure investment far less efficiently and in a far less intentional planning method than they do their own state revenue generation. So, I'm very much in the minority maybe on this issue within this group. But I do hope that we can see additional consistency and flexibility coming from the federal government. I think that's going to be really important to allow our states to plan on the long term and have a very clear delineation of what is a state and what is a federal responsibility. Because the more ambiguous that distinction becomes, the easier it is for officials to just hope that somebody in Washington will answer all their prayers, when the reality is Washington's going to disappoint you, and the best investments are going to be made closest to those determining the allocation and determining the prioritization rather than waiting on a federal windfall.
Thanks, Representative Meijer. The one thing, I think that I want to make sure that it's very clear that, in my history of working in workforce development, I've always seen workforce development to be bipartisan, in some cases nonpartisan. I don't know if that's even possible But we love that we can marry the two and bridge you two to work together. I know that maybe how infrastructure looks and how the funding looks overall might not be, you might not be on the same page yet. But we certainly appreciate the help, understanding that, as we continue to make investments in infrastructure, we're going to need the workforce there to be able to build those bridges and to, install the fiber that's needed for broadband and broadband access as some of our communities continue to struggle with high-speed internet. So thank you for your leadership. We know that we'll be hearing hopefully some things soon around infrastructure and what we may see from a federal standpoint. But thanks for your leadership from both of you.
Yeah, and you're spot on, Jacob, because there's actually, a consistency in the provision of the infrastructure bill that does permit states to provide the funds for pre-apprenticeship, apprenticeships, on-the-job training, and vocational training, which is actually really consistent. And so, obviously, there are some provisions of this bill that I think dovetail from elements of successful legislation that we've seen in the past that also speak right to the heart of what you were discussing, which is, when I got to Congress, I got in a term before Congressman Meijer, and so we didn't get a chance to do this because we were still, in the heart of this pandemic, and we had this big welcome dinner, and everyone got a minute, the 1 minute to introduce themselves, and you kind of say who you are, why you ran, what you want to do in Congress. You get 1 minute to do it. And I had a large incoming class of Congress. I think there was 83 of us. And so this was a couple hour affair almost. And in my turn, you had a lot of people saying, I want to be bipartisan and I want to work across the aisle. And I took it a step further and I said, hey, if you care about workforce development, manufacturing and innovation, I want to work with you. And that has really been such a key to my personal success in Congress, and in terms of that cutting through some of that red tape and what we all obviously see on the national news, a polarized environment. Well, it's not always like that if you talk about the things that naturally bring us together. And some of these workforce development elements that make their way into our bills really are a part of that. So I just wanted to commend you and recognize you for sharing that and recognizing that as well.
Well, I know you guys have had to make some tough decisions, and so and we'll continue to have to make them, right, as we hopefully see some more partisan, bipartisan efforts move forward. So I want to stay on that lens of bipartisan, right, because the family's happy right now. It seems like on this interview, and things are going well. And so there's a bipartisan effort to secure emergency funding to address the auto semiconductor shortage. Auto plants across Michigan have had to make significant temporary layoffs due to this chip shortage. If approved, how will this emergency funding help, and what's the impact on auto plants and other manufacturers in Michigan?
Yeah, well, and this is, I think Congresswoman Stevens and I, probably one of our first conversations back in January of this year was on semiconductors and the auto industry. So it's something that I really appreciate her leadership on this issue, and something that we have a very broad bipartisan recognition is critically important. I think we will certainly see, we've already seen a strong federal response in terms of appreciating that this is a vital issue. But let's also be very clear, semiconductors are not something we will fix overnight. This is going to take years of investment. We could allocate the money and break ground tomorrow and on a foundry, and we wouldn't be able to put those into a truck that might be sitting idle for 4 or 5 years. So I know we've had a lot of focus on reallocating some of the supply chain in Taiwan and South Korea, of trying to accelerate, ways of minimizing the semiconductor use in a car. But obviously, as complexity is improved and performance is improved, that has had a requisite uptick in demand for the technological underpinnings. I'm proud that in our recent Science-Based and Technology Markup Committee hearing, which Congresswoman Stevens and I both sit on, we were able to allocate through an amendment that I put forward $150 million out of a $1 billion kind of tranche in order to focus on supporting the semiconductor manufacturing industry. This just underpins so much of our modern economy, and it's critical that we have the right supply chain, that we have a domestic component to that supply chain, and that we reduce the uncertainty and the risk that we've seen over the course of this pandemic with tightened supply chains that stretch beyond our ability, as a country to directly control.
Yeah, it's true. Congressman Meijer and I have bonded over semiconductors, and what a great memory that is, Peter. And by the way, the diversity of thought and approach to policy making is what gets us the best results. Peter said this very nicely. There's going to be some areas where we're singing from the same hymnal and we really agree this is one of them, and there's others where we have different approaches, and that's also okay. But it's still the let's get things done for Michigan. And that's what you see with our Michigan delegation. It's a really special cohort. And I guess I'm opening up to you guys because I feel like I'm with my family here with Michigan Works. And, those of you who do work, I really honor and admire on behalf of our state in a really unique time. And Jacob, the fact that you asked this question about the chip shortage in this conference is so spot on, because there's the profit loss element that's going on in the auto industry. I think we're looking at, in the hundreds of billions of dollars of sales. My heart starts to race a little bit from the project I worked on about a dozen years ago on the auto rescue and what that means for our industry and the health of our state's economy. But there's something more specific here, and that is the human capital element to something like a chip shortage and supply chain disruptions. And it's not let's wave a wand and all of a sudden we're going to have all these chip manufacturers in the United States of America. My district office in Livonia is down the street from an R&D facility for chip wafers and as one of the suppliers to the auto industry. And so we have a very close-knit relationship and a very keen understanding of what this is going to take. We've got to make these early stage investments that Peter was just talking about through our work on the Science, Space, and Technology Committee, his amendment. We've obviously seen the Senate pass something like the CHIPS Act. But the other thing we need to look at is harnessing our current potential. And the work I referenced that I was doing before I was in Congress in workforce development, that's as part of a network called Manufacturing USA. And I've talked to NIST. Peter and I work very closely with NIST, and NIST is going to be spearheading a workforce development R&D initiative for semiconductors. We've got these assets at our universities. We've obviously got them in companies that have a presence here, but we need to start harnessing that capability to manufacture now, because what happens when you start seeing fewer cars produced, fewer cars being sold? That human capital element is the job loss. It's the people who aren't at work. I've got manufacturers right now, and I'm getting on the horn with one about an hour after we get off this wonderful conference we're on here right now, thinking about, hey, we've got people, we're paying them 40 hours of work, but we've only got 30 hours. And I'm seeing this all throughout the supply chain. And so that we don't want to lose that workforce. We know how difficult it is to tether people to jobs when they're experiencing these downturns, but we've got no choice but to make that investment now. So let's get it done. Peter's spot on. We've got a nice bill. We're going to get it done.
Great. Thanks, representatives. Now, the two of you recently introduced bipartisan legislation that would create a new expansion grant pilot program for the Hollins Manufacturing Extension Partnership Program and help MEP centers cut through bureaucratic red tape by allowing them to choose how to best use federal funds. How would this impact Michigan?
Well, about our wonderful Plymouth-based Michigan Manufacturing Technology Center. I know that they've got operations in West Michigan. They have been responsible for creating or retaining 42,000 jobs over the last decade. This is a public-private partnership that primarily focuses on small to mid-sized manufacturers, and it was a real delight through our work on the Science Committee, through my bill, the NIST for the Future Act, that we were able to get this amendment done. It was the Meijer-Stevens amendment to provide some more flexibility for the MEP dollars that wouldn't necessarily require a match. We traditionally have that match funding, but it's saying, hey, if you want to apply for extra dollars for that workforce training, for that technical assistance, this is, as we've seen our manufacturing sector transform over the decade, particularly with digital applications and sensors and the like, we've had a real need for that technical assistance and that accessibility for new equipment usage, which also the NIST MEP centers also provide. So we're really excited about this amendment and what it means for our network of small manufacturers across Michigan who rely on the services of the Michigan Manufacturing Technology Center.
Yeah, and I think it's hard for folks outside of various manufacturing industries, and as members of Congress, we both see such a broad assortment of local industries. There are buildings you might drive by every day that if you're not working there or if you're not in that industry, maybe don't fully appreciate how much Michigan still builds and still produces. And this is occurring within a challenging global trade system and a challenging local labor market. And so I'm really proud to be supporting this initiative. I think it is really the best in class of how we can establish these public-private partnerships that help to just plug gaps in between, education and employment, and the issues of apprenticeships and the issues of workforce development, and of making sure that our manufacturing sector is, again, given the opportunities to make sure they're on the cutting edge. I think that can be one of the challenges with government programs, is it can constrain you into operating the way things have operated and not offer that flexibility to be able to look towards the future and allocate investments and in a job pipeline accordingly. So I think it's just a fantastic program that, there's not necessarily the easy ribbon cutting or political victory, but making sure that we are kind of bridging some of the gaps that we're seeing in our labor market and in our manufacturing sector today. I think will continue to pay dividends into the future. I'm proud to support it.
Great. Well, thank you, Representatives Meijer and Stevens, for taking the time to participate in this great discussion today. We really appreciate your leadership, your willingness to take time out of your busy schedules to share your thoughts and opinions with us. Thank you for everyone who joined us this discussion today. I hope you find it helpful and that you enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you.
And Stevens for a great discussion, and thank you again to Jacob Maas, CEO of West Michigan Works, for moderating today's town hall. Thank you for attending today's general session. Just a quick reminder to visit the exhibitor booths and to take a few minutes to network virtually with your colleagues. You can interact live with exhibitors in their booths, be randomly paired with another conference member for a 3-minute networking chat, or you can also privately chat with any member from the conference via the chat function. A big thank you to our exhibitors who helped make this conference possible. I hope you enjoy the workshops this afternoon and have a great rest of your day and enjoy the conference.
The Michigan Works Association would like to thank GST Michigan Works for their gold sponsorship of this year's conference. GST Michigan Works has a region-wide team of employer-focused business solution professionals available in all 6 counties they represent to serve the needs of business. Additionally, GST offers a variety of employment services facilitated by an experienced staff of career counselors, employment specialists, and a diverse network of partners offering a host of education, training, and development resources. Visit our website to learn more about our programs and resources, www.gstmiworks.org.